All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Capital Clarity. We have some great speakers today, very excited to hear on some very important topics that I think we can all agree are very important to Idahoans. It's a big topic of conversation right now. Weather modification, mosquito abatement districts. So our first speaker, I'm going to kind of introduce all of our speakers at once to hopefully save on time between so we have enough time to hear from everyone and then also answer questions at the end. Our first speaker is Sarah Alstott, and she is a citizen warrior that has been fighting weather modification in Idaho for the past several years. And she will be followed by Representative Lucas Kaler from District 11, Representative Clint Hostetler from District 24, excuse me. And we will round out the day with hearing from Representative Rob Beiswinger from District 8 about mosquito abatement districts. So please welcome Sarah Alstott.
All right, thank you. So when Ron asked me to do this, I thought, well, I'll just go through my notes and try to give everybody kind of a Cliff Notes version of all the material I've gathered over the last few years. So it was really just a curiosity of pairing up let me find the clicker, the marketing data to the real world data. Okay, so when you go on their website, on IDWR, they have this 10% claim that they're going and able to increase snowpack by 10%. And then you look at another brochure and it says 5 to 15%. And then you look at other data outside of Idaho and it goes up to sometimes 50%. So it's like, where are they getting these numbers? I emailed IDWR and the cloud seeding program manager gave me a Google Drive and told me, look, this is great because all these places are doing cloud seeding. Well, all those places are mostly California. So anyways, when I pressed a little bit more, like, well, what's more data? What can you show me? They usually responded with generator run hours, telling me that this is great because we're running the generator all these hours. And I thought, well, that doesn't really tell me what that 10%, 5 to 15% number was. Okay, so on to looking at what the past legislation was. We passed House Bill 266 in 2021. What it ended up doing is it has IWRB, the Idaho Water Resources Board, authorizing the programs. If a program is authorized under IWRB, there are special liability exemptions. So it's a private company that can carry this out, and they have special liability exemptions. I asked about testing. Who's doing the testing? And they said, oh, DEQ is. Public Records requested DEQ, and they said, we have no idea what the director is talking about. Sorry. And I pushed back and said, hey, here's the email. Can you please verify? And they said, we checked with all departments. There are no records. So I have that in email. One note is the floor sponsor for this was Representative Gibbs. And the now Idaho Department of Water Resources Board cloud seeding program manager is Mr. Mark Gibbs. So I feel like there's maybe an attachment to the program, but that's just speculation. I'll tell you why I feel like this hasn't been fully investigated in a thorough way. So I started watching the board meetings, and they announced that they were going to participate in the GAO review. That's the Government Accountability Office's review of cloud seeding. And the program manager at the time said the GAO is an independent, nonpartisan agency within the legislative branch that supports Congress. So I thought, great, let's wait and see what comes out with that report. Well, fast forward to December 2024, the report's released, and it says When uncertainty was considered in estimates of cloud seeding effectiveness, the estimated effect was not distinguishable from zero, with a high degree of statistical confidence. So here we are. Maybe that's why all the numbers are all over the place, and I couldn't really get to the bottom of that. Now, we did have an expert participant in that through Idaho Power's representation there. So you would think maybe the board would, cover this report since they announced it. Not so. So I decided to look into it. The GAO findings, it says literature will often quote 5 to 15% increases in precipitation from cloud seeding, but rarely acknowledge the statistical uncertainty associated with that increase. So, and then it also notes the pollutant washout risk. So it has lots of good information. I've just pulled out a few slides. The unintended effects of silver iodide, it talks about how it could have a harmful impact because the silver ions can be antimicrobial. It was funny because when they list off these things, they continually say that we're using silver iodide. They don't list anything else. So I think it's important to note that flares don't just contain silver iodide. That's usually in the forms that I've seen in the less than 30% composition. So when you have possibly aluminum and all these other things that are binders and fillers and propellants, I believe the way that they're getting around that is that there's a NOAA form that they have to have for reporting, and it says to list the modification agent. So if the agent is just the silver iodide, all those other fillers and whatnot wouldn't be listed on there. So anyways, you can go on and look on that report. It goes on and on and on. But, with the antibacterial or antimicrobial aspects, it warned about water resources. So seems like water resources should be concerned with that. But now looking back, what was the information we had in 2019 when their hallmark, proving that all this is working? What were the researchers' comments? And it talks about, let me read it from, so the planes sprayed silver iodide into more than 24 clouds that looked ripe for seeding, but they could only draw a clear link between seeding and snowfall in 3 cases. There's a small, hard to pinpoint signal that cloud seeding created additional ice in a handful of other cases, and then no signal at all in some instances. So this is enough to collect your taxpayer dollars to see where it goes, I guess. Anyways, here's their recent budget announcement. So I know there are budget problems. Maybe that's taxpayer savings right there. Okay, on to broader geoengineering projects. So the White House put out this congressional document on SRM, solar radiation modification, and it talks about outdoor experiments could be valuable. It talks about that they could be carried out covertly or openly. These are not my words. These are in the document. Okay, then it goes through and shows U.S. research aircraft, solar climate intervention methods. Under that, it lists stratospheric aerosol injection. So, this is publicly available information. This is not something that I just found online someplace. This is a White House document. So, with that in mind, this is also all the directed agencies that were charged with carrying all of this out, which is now under ICAMS. It stands for Interagency Council for Advancing Meteorological Services. So they've shown that there is research going into geoengineering. All right, when to deploy? So this was, there were 3 sessions in 2009 through 2010, Geoengineering 1, 2, and 3 in the House of Representatives. They have a researcher that discusses when to deploy geoengineering. And he talks about temperatures being met, having a tipping point, and those types of things. So there's plenty of data out there that, you know, we should be cautious how we want to allow it to happen in Idaho or opt out of it. Okay, so what's happening in the private industry? Make sunsets. You can go and buy yourself a cooling credit to help stop global warming. So they're using this for sunscreen for the earth. So far, I don't believe that they've launched any in Idaho, but I know that they're in California, so. Anyways, some form of this is happening. Stardust. So this is a U.S.-Israeli startup. They announced that they have $75 million going towards this and that they plan to start in the spring. The company also mentions that they welcome regulation, but there isn't a lot of detail on what they plan on doing. Okay, and then this article goes through and talks about solar geoengineering aims to manipulate the climate by bouncing sunlight back into space. Okay, so not a conspiracy theory. All right, these are all the states that have decided to take up legislation to opt out of this. And what that does is, even though we don't necessarily have jurisdiction over all of our airspace, you would be saying we don't permit this into falling into our what is our airspace, and we won't allow any launches to happen. So right now, Make Sunsets, companies like this, they're more than welcome to come here. We have weather modification program in code as it is, so why wouldn't they come here? And then Florida, they did pass it. Governor DeSantis says that Florida's not testing ground. Idaho is. Okay, transparency. Where can you find the reports? You can go on NOAA's website and you can look up under Idaho or Boise and look through all the weather modification reports. They had a rulemaking change and looked into adding solar radiation modification reports. Make Sunsets does actually report in there, but they were going to expand that out to all geoengineering. Now, let me quickly say, I know I'm running out of time, so so there's a bill on transparency with cloud seeding, and it's almost laughable to me because I want to say that IWRB could have been transparent. Why are they wanting to legislate now that they want to be honest with us now? Those forms that you fill out, it's a free text. You can type whatever you want. So, to me, if you wanted public trust, all the information would have been in there. You wouldn't have said, oh, let's legislate something that has a few provisions so we can show the public that now, yeah, we'll be honest. Like, the ship has sailed. We don't really care about you wanting to put on a show of transparency. So, anyways, I personally think we need to opt out of this. There's no evidence, and everything they're giving to people is all very cherry-picked. And, yeah, thank you. So, anyways, I want to say also cautionary tales. So some people say, oh, well, we don't have the full description and plan of what's going on. Remember that in 1977, they had a hearing for the biological testing involving human subjects by the DoD. There were 239 times that biological agents that were thought to be safe were released between 1949 and 1969. There are plenty of instances that you need to look at to understand why we would want to pass legislation that would ban geoengineering. I would say DDT, the ball out with the downwinders, all these things make it prudent to look into more than just transparency. Let's not forget our past and repeat it over again. Thanks.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for coming out. Do apologize for my late entrance down here. We ran really late down on the floor this morning. My name is Lucas Kaler. I represent District 11 in Caldwell in Canyon County. And I just wanted to give a real brief update. So I am the sponsor of the RS 33149, which is the bill that I brought and attempted to introduce to do a full repeal on cloud seeding. I appreciate the applause, but unfortunately, despite our best and most valiant attempts to try to get this bill introduced into committee, we have two committees that we possibly could have introduced this into. The first one is the Conservation and Resources Committee that is chaired by Representative Mendive, and he was unwilling to hear it. The second committee was Environment, Energy, and Technology, chaired by Representative Barbieri. He was also unwilling to hear this, citing specifically that we would be facing severe opposition, not from we the people, but from a certain sector of the community, namely the farmers. And then, of course, Idaho Power would also come out very strongly against this, and they have. Everybody hears rumors and hears little bits and pieces about things, about what happens down here at the Capitol, about who controls the legislature and who drives the narrative and who has the greatest interest in what happens in the legislature and what agendas get pushed. And I can honestly say, after being here now on my second year, first term, the greatest and sometimes only real influence down here in the legislature are the lobbyists. And that's sadly the case that we're up against right here. The challenge is trying to navigate what we the people want, you, versus what the lobbyists want. And the lobbyists, of course, are representing the big corporate interests here in the state. And so as much as it pains me to say it, this bill is dead on arrival. We tried to run it past House leadership, and it was an emphatic no on that because, in the words of leadership, what are you trying to do? Piss off everybody in the state, the ranchers, Idaho Power, and everybody else is going to be mad at you, and we're in a water year shortage anyway, and there isn't any snow. But then the argument would be made, if cloud seeding worked, where's the snow? But I digress. So what we're going to do, in lieu of the fact that our gold standard for cloud seed repeal is not going to be introduced, I will file this as a personal bill just so we have record of it in the House, and hopefully I'll be able to do that tomorrow before close of business. And one of the things that we really wanted to cite here, and I'm not going to go through the whole report, and you are free to look up and to research this on your own, is the 2024 GAO report, Government Accountability Office, on cloud seeding technology. And the fast facts of this are, it was an assessment done, and they looked at the unavailable or unreliable data on effectiveness, the unpredictable cloud conditions which need to be favorable for cloud seeding, and the uncertain safety of using silver iodide more widely. And then it's a very long report. I encourage you to go read it. It's about 44 pages in total, but I'm just going to touch on this. Existing research we've reviewed. While limited to a handful of recent studies suggest silver iodide does not pose an environmental or health concern at current levels. However, it is not known whether more widespread use of silver iodide would have an effect on public health or the environment. Now, granted, this was published about 2 years ago, and since then we've received a lot of public testimony. We have heard a lot of reports, eyewitness accounts, people both in the industry and out who have weighed in on this. And there does appear to be very possible negative environmental impacts and very negative impacts on people's health. And the most important thing to take away is we, the people, have the right to informed consent. We have the right to breathe clean air. And if there are entities that are doing things in our state, if there's entities that are doing things in our state of which they are, one, not disclosing what they're doing, the products they are using, the unintended health consequences, or B, going back to House Bill 266, which was introduced and passed in 2021, Idaho Power is then held exempt from any liability with regard, and not limited to, I'm going to read the last part of this bill, the act of cloud seeding pursuant to a project funded in whole or in part by the state of Idaho or authorized by the State Water Resource Board shall not be the basis of any claims to liability, including but not limited to trespass, public or private nuisance, and shall not require any state or local permits, holding Idaho Power and any other entity harmless for what they're doing. And that is completely unacceptable. And with that, that's my report on our attempts to try to get cloud seeding at least stopped. And I'll turn it over to the Representative Hostetler. And thank you for coming out, folks.
All right. Conspiracy theories. There are a few conspiracy theories left out there. This one we've knocked down with some of Epstein list was a conspiracy theory for a long time, right? We have a few left. I think Trump taking away women's rights is still a conspiracy theory, and imprisoning all the LGBTQ plus community, that's still a conspiracy theory, so we can hold on to those. But geoengineering, definitely not. The good representative stole much of my talking points. Thank you. We probably should have discussed first. But I'm going to echo a lot of that sentiment. And once again, thank you to Sarah Allstott, who's really kind of been the glue that's held a lot of this together while we're up here hustling and trying to negotiate and read all the bills. She's really been a solid pillar in doing a lot of the deep dive research for our team. And we, again, can't thank her enough. So thank you again to Sarah Allstott for all she's done. Representative Kaler and I, we actually originally introduced 3 pieces of legislation because we kind of see how things go here, as he alluded to, the power structure, leadership, the influence mostly from outside entities, not as much from the people as we'd expect. Of course, we'll always call you to get engaged, come on down like you're doing now, making calls, showing up to committees, but we understood the process, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the process really quickly because Representative Beiswanger has a great piece of legislation he's going to discuss. But back to my legislation, or our legislation, I should say, and I'm going to call it the people's legislation, as we've seen now, how many states are we up to? 3/4 of the states of the United States, I should say, have proposed or even passed legislation against geoengineering, whether that's cloud seeding or SRM, SAI. So this is not some influence of some random conspiracy theorists. This is a big movement that is important to the United States and really the people of the world. So, yeah, thank you. I'll take a solo clapper. No, so my 2 pieces of legislation, one was an actual transparency and accountability in regard to cloud seeding, and it was dramatically different than what is going through on the Senate side right now. It said all cloud seeding projects need to be brought through the legislature with third-party data, not the invested stakeholders themselves providing the data, and it needed to have full disclosure. And here's a big one, actually not have immunity. Wow, Who still has immunity if you think about it these days? I know vaccine companies have immunity. Don't want to go down that conspiracy hole. But anytime any entity is begging for not having to hold themselves accountable and getting out of the liability aspect, it raises some red flags. So that was my bill, and having to jump through hoops right now and dealing with the same thing. Some outside entities have come in and swayed a commitment by a chairman for me to hear that. And I was just told twice this week, given a commitment to hear both my pieces of legislation. One of those is now in the trash can. So and that's the cloud seeding accountability and transparency. My second is a greater mission, I think, as Sarah alluded to. Geoengineering is not just cloud seeding. It is SRM, SAI, marine cloud brightening, and other mechanisms, if you will. So my second piece of legislation was a memorial to Congress to say, you have to do your job. This is happening above our airspace with unaccountable agencies that have gone dark under the basically guard of the DOD. And so we aren't able to get information except for what we can dig and find on their own websites. Other than that, we have no ability to stop what is happening above us. So Congress needs to step up and get involved and do their job. And unfortunately, we are still in what I call the marketing campaign or the information war. There are a lot of people, as I've talked around here in the Capitol, that don't even know what's going on above their heads, or let alone believe it. And once again, it's hard to breach that, if you will, when you have the outside entities that are conflating issues and giving, pseudoscience and bad data, as Sarah alluded to again. So that was my second piece of legislation, a memorial telling Congress, we know what's going on. We want to get on board with the vast majority of our states right now who are saying we do not approve or want geoengineering at all above our heads. So we're still pushing forward, and I'm not giving up. Leads me to what I'm here to discuss, essentially, is the process here. How many people understand the process of trying to get legislation through? No legislators, please, no? I'd rather you come up and tell me. There's some veterans here that have been fighting the good fight for a lot longer than we have, part of our G8, Zeiderveld and Zitto, and they understand. And even Wisniewski over here, Woodshed Wisniewski, and I'll let him tell you that story, one of my favorites. But that being said, it's quite a process to get through legislation and to get it moving. First, you have to have an idea, right? Where does that come from? The idea comes from yourself, one of your constituents, and many times it comes from the administrations and lobbyists here in the state, and the state house specifically. And what they'll do, I should probably open my notes so I don't go too off topic here. What they do is you have that idea, or they give you an idea, and you go into an information curation period, and you draft the legislation, right? And when you get that draft finalized, you take it amongst all the people and you double check everything. And then you go back to LSO, Legislative Services Offices, who have given you the draft and they've put it into Idaho code and cross-referenced and did everything to make it legitimate and legal. Then you get it RS'd after you've kind of had the initial eyes on it, right? You get it RS'd. And when you get it RS'd, you then have to find the germane or the relevant committee to take that through. And so after you have it RS'd, you have to go to a chairman and say, Mr. Chairman, and sometimes leadership, I have this RS and it deals with such and such subject, and I'd like to get a hearing on this, or an introduction, if you will. And at that time, you get eyes on it. More eyes start getting involved, and that's when you get the outside entities that want to come in and start cherry picking things and crossing things out and saying, oh, this doesn't do well for us here at Idaho Power. I mean, whatever. And then you many times have to go back to the drawing board, and a lot of people will start the compromise or watering down section. But after you get that, let's say you get the germane committee with the chairman that will stand firm and let you hear your or introduce your RS, you have to get that through the committee. And for the most part these days, they say, hey, if it's a bill hearing, just let them get the hearing, the introduction, so we can actually get all the information in the hearing. So ideally, when you bring an RS before a committee, these days, cut down the questions. Let's just get it in so it can get an official hearing. And then you can have all your testifiers and you can spend your time kind of fleshing it out before the committee. And around that time as well, you have to start working the committee. So there's people in there that may be left, right, whatever it is, they may think it's a conspiracy or they don't believe in the ideology, whatever it is, right? You have to start getting them on your side, right? You have to start talking to them. This is what my bill does. Do you have any concerns? And so you're really trying to navigate murky waters from the get-go as this process moves forward. Let's say you get it introduced and you get the bill hearing. That's where you get the great testifiers like Sarah and many others. IFF can come in. Lobbyists can come in at that time. Citizens can come in. You can have scientists. You can have researchers. You can have doctors. They come in and they present their evidence why they're there to stand with you on your bill or why they're there to shoot it down. At that point, it either gets voted up or down by the committee onto the House floor where it gets the vote up or down on the House. And at that point, if you get through the committee onto the floor, then you have to start lobbying everybody on the floor because you worked really hard and you want to get that bill passed. Now, let's say you get it through the committee, you get it onto the floor, and praise the Lord, you get it passed. Then it goes through the same process on the other side, in the other chamber. It goes to the germane committee on the Senate side, then has to go through the whole process again, essentially, to go to the Senate side and be voted on. And then, ideally, passed by the governor, signed or vetoed, or he leaves it alone and it gets put into law. This is my second session, first term as well, and there are so many nuances I'm still learning. As the good representative Kaler had alluded to, we're still learning the process, and it's a darker, more nefarious process than I anticipated. It's discouraging many of the times to realize I came up here thinking that we and the people had a lot of power, right? And it just took some momentum and the voice of the people to get things done. Unfortunately, that's not the way. But don't lose hope. I'm not telling you this to black pill you, as they say, or for you to give up. I'm just encouraging you all to continue to show up, to make the calls, to talk to the chairman, to get out there and knock on doors with things as important as geoengineering and the implications that are coming down the road with this. We all need to get involved. And I know it's tough and we're all busy, but the time is short. If we don't do that, where do we go from here? So I hope that all made sense. I believe I hit all my talking points. I could go on, but we have another great representative fighting for the people's health and our future and our air and our soil and our water, things that kind of matter. So Representative Beiswinger is up next, and thank you all. And I can't thank you enough, everyone, IFF and Sarah and everyone who's shown up. We appreciate you. God bless you.
All right, thanks for everybody for coming out. My name is Rob Beiswinger. I represent District 8, which is enormous. It's bigger than probably New England. So I cover Boise, Valley, Custer, and Elmore counties. So we go all the way to McCall, where Faye's from, and we go all the way down to like Glens Ferry and the way down to Elmore County, Garden Valley, Idaho City, Chalice, Stanley, all this stuff. So we cover a lot of ground. So definitely different than growing up, where I grew up out of Philadelphia, where everybody's like in, 1 square mile, there's like 1 billion people there. So a little bit different moving to Idaho a few years ago. But, I came here and I ran for office over like medical freedom issues. And I could go through a whole life story of my mom. She had suffered from cancer and wasn't able to get the kind of treatment she wanted for it. And then my wife and I started a business working with kids with autism, doing behavioral therapies and hearing the stories from parents talking about the vaccines and how they injured their child, and people just disregarded they wouldn't even listen to them, and oftentimes pushed back. It split families up, and there's sort of a short version of how these issues became near and dear to my heart really fast and really strongly, and the whole thing was very frustrating to me, seeing how the pharmaceutical industry dominated so much of the health space that if you weren't part of in that system, you weren't allowed to advertise, you weren't allowed to treat, you weren't allowed to tell people things, all that kind of stuff. So I ran for office over the whole COVID stuff, and I really didn't know if I could win the first point, but I got through on the second try. And so I started drafting, vaccine mandate language and kind of stuff. And last year I carried the medical freedom bill on the House side. And, And it seems easy now, but at the time, you didn't really know. Like the previous year, we couldn't even ban mask mandates in Idaho before that. And then one election later, with a whole new slew of legislators in office, we were able to pass it overwhelmingly in the House, passed it nicely in the Senate, and eventually got the governor to see the light. Kind of you feel the pressure, you feel the heat, see the light kind of thing, right? Eventually he signed it and put it into law. Well, right after that bill was passed, I know it was probably maybe May of last year, I got a call and said, hey, would you show up at the Old State Saloon? We're talking about like a legislative wrap-up season. We'd like you to talk a little bit about what happened there. So I get there, I gave my spiel, the 10-minute version or whatever, how the bill all came to be. And a lady stands up, she says, hey, I'm from Gem County, and I'm having a problem in my district with these mosquito abatement districts. And I'm sitting there, obviously new to Idaho, and but also this is unknown to most people in Idaho, that 23 counties in the state have a special taxing district. So in a county like Gem County or Canyon and others, they have a special tax that helps pay for mosquito spraying or treatment of different kinds, right? And she said, well, look, she's like, I want to help this because basically I'm pleading with my county to stop spraying. I moved out here into the middle of Gem County, like in between Emmett and Horseshoe Bend, and I got here to grow my own food and to protect my kids to get away from all this stuff. This is exactly why I moved here, only to find there's a special program that targets the area that I happen to live in, and I have no choice in the matter. And she's like, would somebody help me with it? And I was like, man, yeah, sounds good. I'll help you. And I really didn't know what to expect out of it. And, there's so many different things out there. So she and I met. We started emailing and calling and stuff, trying to dig into what was going on here, what was happening, what her complaints were. And, first thing, I was like, look, passing a bill is a big deal. Like, Clint said, it's a process, right? And you've got to get all these things in line, all these obstacles cleared out of your way. I was like, honestly, if we could fix this before a legislative fix, that would be to everyone's benefit. You would get hopefully protected and what you're looking for. So she's like, look, she went through the Attorney General's office. She went to county commissioners, the mayor, back and forth with people. She had other people calling in and emailing records requests. She's got all this. I have a green folder in my desk of all the different communications she's done. She's like, nobody will take responsibility for what's going on here. Apparently, these mosquito districts are just unaccountable, at least as far as Gem County is concerned. They just they have their program and they operate it as they see fit. And they're just saying, well, look, Gem County, 50 years ago, whatever exactly it was, voted this in, therefore it's going to happen. And I'm sorry that you don't like it, but you should like it. And so that's kind of we got. So eventually I said, okay, we'll start crafting a bill and let's start going through it. So you look at the original language. The state allows these districts to happen. And if you read the bill, the original, the current code, it talks about how people can request an opt-out there. And so, okay, you can spray, but you can be allowed to opt out. But you have to submit a written plan to the mosquito district, and that if they approve it, then you can opt out of it. Right? So it kind of still gives all the power still to this mosquito abatement district and the county officials to do it or not. And I was like, well, that doesn't really seem fair. Really, it should be up to, people should probably be opting into this thing and so forth. So we crafted the bill up. We went to the chairman. Unfortunately, she was agreeable in the House local government, and we ran a bill. Now, this bill would have said if people want it, they need to opt into it. And if they request to opt out of it at any point, they also have to honor that. And it puts some other restrictions in place and potentially puts a fine on the district if they don't honor that. So we had a big hearing, and so you've got a room full of say 15 legislators there, and again only 23 of the counties, and they're pretty much all in the southern part of the state that have these districts at all. So you've got the vast majority have no mosquito abatement districts, and the legislators there are of course totally unfamiliar with it. So we had a hearing, and the bill was very aggressive. I think it was kind of like asking for a lot. But to me, it's like, well, let's put it out there and let's just see, kind of sort this out. So we had a pretty good discussion in committee hearing. Some of these abatement district managers, not the ones from Gem County who were really, after here, they came out and testified, so here's how we do it. Now, we did learn, somewhat, hopefully, that a couple of these guys actually are allowing out. In Canyon County, for example, this guy stood up here and he runs the whole thing. He's like, if they ask to opt out, we just let them go. Like, we're just not going to. Maybe it's just not worth his hassle or what, but he honored that, and he would just allow people to opt out. And so some of the actors out there seem to be doing okay and treating people fairly, and I think the intent of the original law is to allow them to opt out. Even I've had other legislators in here who are familiar with that said, hey, this is going on this way. And he goes, well, they're supposed to opt out. They're supposed to be allowed. I'm like, well, but they're not honoring it, right? And I think the law isn't very clear. It still leaves it kind of murky. So we had the hearing. Ultimately, we voted to hold I thought the vote in committee would lose. It may have been a tie vote. We may have, been like that. But we saw some weak spots in it because, again, it's a topic people don't know well about. So I felt instead of trying to push the envelope and getting this version through, we could just tweak a few things. Because one thing is there's a difference here between when you treat for mosquitoes, there's a larvicide, which basically you can put in there and it will kill them like before they're going, right? It's more of a preventative measure. Versus an adulticides are these very heavy, basically to kill the mosquitoes. It is a toxic kind of spray on it. And so there's different treatment methods. So we didn't necessarily, we kind of want to encourage more of a larvicide approach if they're going to do it and not this, versus the adulticides, which are very toxic. So we're going to come back in committee here. I think we've got the bill just about cleaned up now. We put some final touches on it last night. So we'll come back and submit it, but you've got this battle between your personal individual rights, between your health, your property. You could have a plane just doing like a crop duster going across you and hosing it down. But the guy in county showed, and other guys have confirmed, I talked to a guy yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, in Twin Falls, and he kind of confirmed, we can work around the offense. We know exactly how to work this thing. And in Kenny County, they're actually using drones for aerial spraying now. So he can take a drone, go into someone's property, and he can find the area, go psst, and move on. So it's not just like, from 100 feet above, just crop dusting everybody with this stuff. So they are able to do this much more effectively and individualize it. So really, I think they have almost no excuses left to really dial in and get the people who want it and leave the people alone who don't want it. It's kind of the vaccine question here. If you want to go get your measles shot, I'm not here to stand in your way. That's your right to go choose that, and you can go get your own treatment as you see fit. But if you don't want it, certainly you shouldn't be like losing your job or, because if you're there in your property, you're getting sick from it. People in Gem County, for example, when this spraying goes on, they will get in their car and drive outside of the spraying zone and sleep in their car to avoid getting sick. But these people from like Gem County, will respond and say, oh no, it's been approved. It's safe. It's fine, which I don't understand. Even today, I showed this little drink I got from the Boise Co-op, and she's like, oh, what's the sweetener in it? I was like, oh, it's stevia. She's, oh, well, I'm allergic to stevia. Well, if someone could be allergic to stevia or bananas or peanuts, certainly you're going to have some people who are allergic to dibrom or some other chemicals and stuff that could be sprayed on you to kill insects. I don't understand how this makes more sense to everybody here. So my goal is here to protect it. I do think we will get the bill through the committee. Lord knows what will happen after that. This is quite the process here. But I am optimistic. People are now aware of the topic. It's getting out there. I think you do have a bunch of us here who would like to get this fixed and protect people's rights for their health and their property. I think it's a good issue here. But you see, even in other conversations I've had here, there's like, you don't want to necessarily tell local government everything that they have to do, but you also want to protect individual rights. So you're kind of pushing through some of these things. And, some of the people who've been in this building the longest are probably the ones who would like to see kind of this stuff done the least because they're part of oh, no, we need this for this, and we need this for that, and you can't do this. And, it's all this sort of built-in, kind of memory muscle of how this place works. But there's really a new crop of people, I think, through our country here. And I think the longer we go on, we're going to keep sorting these things out and kind of peeling back the layers and doing a better job of protecting our health and our rights. So I don't know, hope I didn't talk too fast. Should I take questions, or do you want me to? I can kind of ramble for a while.
Thank you so much, Rob. All right, thank you so much to our 4 speakers. We do have about 15 minutes left for questions. Really quickly, though, an interesting note. Fantastic information that was given, and then great instruction on the legislative process. I've been involved in the legislative process for the last several years, and something that's always been very, very interesting to me is that leadership and chairmen essentially exercise de facto gubernatorial veto power by holding good legislation in their drawers and not letting them have hearings. The IFF last session created a page on our website called the Chairman's Drawer, and we'll have it again this year. And if you go back and look at last year's, it was chock full of some of the best, the gold standard legislation all died largely in the chairman's drawer. It's just kind of an interesting note. If we could have all 4 of our speakers join up here, and then if you'll line up if you have questions behind the microphone. If you would keep your questions more on the brief side, then we can hear from more people and hopefully get more questions answered.
I didn't hear the bottom line, wildlife populations, insect populations. The Children's Health Defense just put out an article that 75% of all the insects are gone in the world. And I own 40 acres with the Littlewood River on it. My river is full of algae and suds, like the Snake River is. I was a falconer for 50 years, so I'm very wildlife focused. I didn't even see starlings on my land last year, which is a pest bird. I think 80% of the birds' populations are gone. So the bottom line, what's a canary in the coal mine is the jackrabbit population. Why? How do we get the wildlife, Fish and Wildlife Department to list the jackrabbit as an endangered species? Because it's gone. I see only straggler birds and straggler jackrabbits. There was no mourning doves on my land, and the meadowlarks are gone on my land. And again, that's all been documented. It's in science papers. Most of the wildlife is gone in the world because of geoengineering and probably cell phone towers too.
I don't know if that was a question or a comment, but sure. Okay, yeah. I'll put that on my list on how to go about that. I don't know if anybody, but you're right. I mean, this is the reality. I just read a statistic the other day that 90% of the American bumblebee is gone. We're talking about the most vital pollinator, right? So, things are building up. We've been seeing this for decades now. So, something good to think about and good information. I would have to log that, and if anyone wants to address that.
Well, let me just say real quick, in the mosquito, one of the complaints about those districts when they sprayed, they're going on, they're going on private property. They're not just going down state roads. And our friends of ours live out there in that area, and they will drive through their driveway. They had the box full of bees there, just wiped out overnight with one treatment. We have pictures that we showed around too a little bit, showing that bee populations are being killed by these districts. So okay, you're killing mosquitoes. What's the collateral damage too, right? The dragonflies are dead. So stuff like this is probably part of the problem, and
one thing too is in Ada County in 2021 they aerial sprayed us, and the public pushback was so intense that they said that they do have new policy that they won't do that anymore. So I would say round up a lot of people and have some public pushback.
Yeah, on the subject of geoengineering, but the earth, not the sky, is there anything going on in Idaho regarding carbon sequestration? I know there's a lot going on in Iowa and other Midwestern states. It's a concern of mine. I just want to make sure it's not happening here, and do we need legislation to prevent it and nip it in the bud?
Yeah. I have not heard of that here yet. I do know what you're referring to, and I'll be honest, I would not be surprised if it was coming down the pipe. And so that's something great. Actually, we should all probably be looking into on how we can be proactive, because at the end of the day, we're being reactive. We should be proactive and preserving our culture in every aspect of Idaho here now. I'm realizing more and more we need to be proactive. And that sets a lot of people on edge. But we need to do it for the important things. So that's a great question. But I've heard nothing right now coming. But
maybe the geology here might be different enough. There's not near as much limestone. It's all volcanic, so that might be part of what they want to bury it in, so maybe we're safe.
Maybe. Thank you.
Hi, Jim County citizen and resident, and also victim of mosquito abatement. But I'm here to, first of all, thank you all. I've thanked you before. I'm very familiar with the legislation. I support it. I just want to publicly thank you and encourage people to get behind you. But my question is maybe for Representative Hofstetler. You mentioned that the bill that was to bring accountability, and that one's not going anywhere, whatever. are you familiar with Senator Nichols just presented a bill with the similar title? Are you familiar with that? Can you speak to that? Is it the same thing? Is that going?
I can, and I'm very disappointed with that bill, and I'll leave it at that. I think it codifies essentially bad law, and it validates right off the bat just quickly. I'm not here to try and, do that. But at the same time, you can't say something is validated and relevant and necessary and has been proven at the same time saying we need to prove it more. And we need to let the cedars themselves and the invested interest parties tell us how valid they are. It's the fox guarding the hen house type of adage there. And so I could go into detail. I won't, but it's insufficient to say the least, I'll say. And that's why I'm still going to see what I can do with mine. But I hope that answers your question.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I think the huge difference is that his was actionable. It would have moved the decision process to the legislature. The legislation that you just were talking about, it keeps it where it is. So you're still with the same water board, and it's not going to make.
Yes, that is problematic. That's the problem we have in Jim County with our accountability. But, so have you guys talked to Senator Nichols to try to help with that language, or there's just no going anywhere? That's what I'm hearing, is there's no, working together.
She worked on the bill last year, and it pretty quickly, in my opinion, became co-opted by a big industry. And so I made known that my support was not going to be behind those types of actions. And
well, thanks for clarifying, because all I heard was a little snippet of, testimony or her presenting. I didn't know, I haven't read the bill, so I don't even know if it's been printed, so I don't know.
And I think that's a really good point, is the title compared to what it does. And I think that a lot of legislators that have been used to titling stuff for a win and not being transparent and thinking that we're not going to read it. Read it. It's not about transparency at all.
Hello. I was wondering, what exactly is it that makes us so beholden to lobbyists, and how can we change that? I'm
going to let you in on a little secret here. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and you can look up the Sunshine Report of every candidate that runs for elected office across the state. Everything from coroner to legislator to highway district, all the way up to the office of the governor. You can see who donates, and that right there is a very key indicator of where that individual, where their loyalties lie. Okay, and it'll give you a blow-by-blow breakdown of all of the entities, whether it's PACs, whether it's corporations, whether it's personal, private donations, associations, unions. And some people, and I'm speaking specifically to members of the legislature, some people, all of their donations come from corporate entities and from unions and associations. And I think that is a really big tell about where that legislators, where their loyalties lie. And I don't mean to impugn the character of anybody who does receive donations from other than just the people in their district, their constituents, but I think it is an indicator.
Okay, so when they say, do you want to piss off all the lobbyists and make everyone mad, they're really saying, I'm not going to get my bribes?
Right.
Yes.
I don't want to call it a bribe, but there is an incentive to not do something that's going to anger the person who could potentially donate max contributions to your reelection.
Those are questions to ask after we get unelected. By the way. That's good.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say, previously, Sarah, you were talking about going to the government. That's where the information is. I was wondering if you've gone to Geoengineering Watch and Dan Whittington. He's talked to legislatures around the country, scientists. He's been doing this for over 20 years. He talked to the Wyoming legislature, and he talks about how when we say weather modification or cloud seeding, that's that's a false statement. It's weather warfare. He talks about how dangerous it is and what a late hour we're at as far as the insects and the plants and the animals and us breathing in aluminum dioxide, barium dioxide, silver iodine. They're all toxic metals. They're under hazmat. So I was just curious if you've gone to him. He's a huge resource, and he just talks about how to get past this cloud seeding, because it sounds like a great thing, cloud seeding. Well, we're trying to bring precipitation to farmers and ranchers. It's anything but. So.
Yeah, I have, sorry, just real quick.
Why did this all start? Like, what's wrong with mosquitoes? Before the Idaho Conservation League, or before Bagon was invented, before West Nile virus, what made these districts form and want to interrupt the food web? Was it because of horses? Was it because of people that are allergic to malaria or get malaria? Why did all this start?
Yeah, so why did mosquito abatement districts start? Where do they come from? You know, it depends who asks. There's different versions of now, because now you've had like West Nile virus. Now the current rationale for it as well, these mosquitoes may transmit West Nile, so therefore we need to spray all. Well, there's that too. And so you have like farmers and ranchers. I want to protect my animals because
Put a mosquito collar on them. Like, why do we have mosquitoes? They're pretty important to bats or something like that, right? Like, I don't know.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir, I guess maybe is what I should say here.
It sounds like these guys formed their own districts for their own interests rather than public health. I don't know.
They would argue it's for the public health, but there's pros and cons, and there's rights and that kind of stuff too, right? So
I'm not a big mosquito fan, but I don't like. I don't know.
So when I'm trying to win a majority vote in this committee, I mean, one of their questions is if too many people opt out, will those mosquitoes be running rampant, and we're going to have mass deaths across whichever county we've now carved out, even though majority of counties don't do this whatsoever. You're right, but
I'd say get rid of the mosquito abatement districts and,
It's the balance of nature disrupted.
It is.
Well, and that's one of the things we were talking about. I mean, it's like you could have. Why don't these districts have a bunch of bat house? I literally brought that up when I first. They could have, instead of doing the sprays, have bats running everywhere. We call it the bat bill.
Really quickly to address yours, Sarah was going to address your question about Dane Wigington. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I have, I think, it's one of the great resources. It goes into the whole, like, what's not disclosed.
And I was just going to add one question in response to the last gentleman that was just up at the microphone. How did humanity survive for the thousands of years that it has before the Idaho state government came along and decided to start legislating safety?
I guess my point that I've been looking at what's going on is this Capitol is the house of our representation. So when we elect you guys, we send you in here so you can get together and talk about different things. At what point was there some document created by whoever might have done it that allows corporate interests to override the public? Because our Constitution says it's we the people, for the people, of the people. And you guys are there to work for us. And yet now we find that within your own ranks, we have people that have the leprosy of corporate interests buried in them. I talked to Thad from the Republican Party, and he said, I asked him last year, I said, how do we get lobbyists out of the Capitol building? And he was really quite plain, and he said, who do you want to piss off? And it would be everybody. He said it would be just such a huge thing, but there has to be some way that we can deny corporate interests into our house of government.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to his question real quick, and just to wrap it up, since we're out of time. I mean, the reality is at the end of the day, lobbyists serve many different causes, right? There's people lobbying for good moral choices and for protecting our children. And so, it's the lobbyist necessarily isn't the problem. The money will always be in politics. That's not necessarily the problem. By the way, I'll tell you where you can donate to me after this. It is the firm, political, moral, fundamental foundation of us legislators? Are we going to allow, the corporatocracy or whatever we want to call it to dictate to us because they write a check? Am I going to do what's right for your children and my son and our state and its future? At the end of the day, we need integrity and we need perseverance and we need strength and we need legislators that are willing to stand firm and not allow the money to corrupt them, right? And not allow the power to do that. And that's the reality. And Fortunately, thank you for that epic slow clap right there. And we should probably wrap it up, huh? But thank you guys so much again.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. As a reminder, Capitol Clarity next week is at noon across the Capitol in the Lincoln Auditorium. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers.